It's great to be with you all, and they are important discussions. I would also like to pay my respects to the traditional custodians of the land on which we meet and acknowledge their elders past and present. But as Professor of Ageing, I'd also like to acknowledge the elders of all the cultures that make up this wonderful country of Australia, including my own ancestors. I recently found a convict in the family tree. Yay! You realise convicts are Australian royalty, don't you? And I looked at why he was convicted and I thought, oh, did he steal a loaf of bread to feed the starving children? Not in our family. He was convicted of bigamy. So what we're going to look at today is legal instruments, in my part, for advanced co-planning. So the context for this is that better living conditions and healthcare have led to increased longevity. Now this is a success story. There were nearly 4,000 people in Australia, over 100 in the last census, many of them still living at home well and happily, thank you very much. Hey, it's better than the alternative, isn't it? But people make it sound like doom and gloom. It is a success story and we should celebrate that. But in addition, rapid technological development has allowed people who would previously have died to be kept alive for long periods of time, often through the use of such things as ventilators and feeding tubes. And these successes have led to practical, legal and ethical issues, in particular around end-of-life care and extending the dying process. In a lot of my research, I've heard lots and lots of stories of concerns about what happened. Mum always said she wouldn't want to be resuscitated if her heart stopped, but they wouldn't listen. One woman told me that her mother said the medical staff were running through her room like a gravy train. She didn't know most of the time what they were there for or what they were doing. They would just say something like, oh, we're just taking you down to test you for whatever. They never asked her permission. Now, get very clear in your head, you do not give up your right to informed consent just because you are admitted to hospital or a nursing home or anywhere else. You should still be told what's being offered, what the alternatives are, what will happen if you don't have it, and you absolutely have the right to accept or refuse any treatment. And if I say to a doctor or a nurse, don't touch me, and they do, even to save my life, I can have them for assault. Under the common law in every state and territory of Australia, and in those states and territories which have a criminal code under that as well. And this is a very clear case, the next one down. This man was in his late 80s, he had multiple problems, he decided he had enough. He decided he would stop eating and drinking. His wife said, first of all, he was stubborn when he was in hospital. He just wouldn't eat, he was starving himself. They couldn't get him to eat. So they had to force feed him. They put a tube down his nose and then they had to tie him in the bed because he just kept pulling it out. He just didn't want it. There was no question about his capacity. He just didn't want it. So he just didn't have to have it. That is a clear case of assault. And if his wife had understood the law, she could have taken legal action. So the legislative basis for advanced planning in New South Wales is the Powers of Attorney Act. And note I've said advanced planning here, not advanced care planning. The Powers of Attorney Act, the Guardianship Act, and a lot of people are still out there saying that advance directives are not legally binding in New South Wales. Let me put it beyond doubt, they absolutely are. They always have been under the common law, but we hadn't had a common law case in Australia until 2009 in the New South Wales Supreme Court. We had a very, very good case, the Hunter case, and if anyone wants the details, let me know. It is beyond doubt that advance directives, it came down virtually from the judge's finding, virtually to you could write it on the back of an envelope and provided there was evidence you'd written it and no evidence you'd changed your mind, it is legally binding. So don't let doctors or solicitors or anyone else tell you that advance directives are not legally binding in New South Wales. They are. You can see I get pretty upset about this, can't you? The other good news, really good news, at the Advanced Care Planning and End of Life Conference a couple of weeks ago, the Commonwealth Minister for Health announced funding to get advanced directives and advanced care planning documents into the personally controlled electronic health records. So they will be available when we need them. So the legal mechanisms. For financial matters in New South Wales, you can appoint an enduring power of attorney. Now be very, very clear. How many of you in this room have appointed an enduring power of attorney? Wonderful. How many of those of you who have appointed an enduring power of attorney think the person you've appointed can make your healthcare decisions? Sorry, they can't. Enduring power of attorney in New South Wales applies only to property and money. If you want someone to make your healthcare decisions, you appoint an enduring guardian. And you support your enduring guardian by giving them an advance directive of your wishes. So what is an advance directive? Well, it's a written document which allows a person to make their wishes for future healthcare known. It extends the current right of a competent person to refuse treatment to a future time when they may not be competent. It is not a form of euthanasia. It only allows actions which you could legally consent to for yourself if you are competent to speak. And as with the enduring guardian, it only comes into effect when the person making it loses capacity. So what is an enduring guardian? Well, a competent person aged 18 or over can appoint someone to make personal and lifestyle decisions or decisions about their dental and medical treatment in case they lose capacity. You have to appoint someone who is at least 18, usually a trusted relative or friend. You can't appoint your GP, you can't appoint the community nurse, you can't appoint the person that the family are paying to come in and look after you, and you can't appoint a relative of theirs. When I do this presentation out in some of the smaller rural areas, they say, well, that wipes out the community. However, the best you can, it's got to be someone independent and not a paid carer. And you can appoint more than one. When I was doing mine, I phoned my son and I said, Steve, am I right in thinking you'd be happy to have my enduring power of attorney for finances, but you would prefer that Kimmy has my enduring guardianship for healthcare? He said, oh, absolutely, Mum, because she'll do as you tell her and I won't. Oh, great. He said, no, I know you. You'd say if I'm in that condition, don't let them do any more tests or operations. But I'd want to bring in every specialist that existed and keep you going to the last gasp. But Kim will do as you tell her. So I phoned my daughter and I said, is this okay by you? She said, absolutely, Mum, but isn't it typical? The boys get to look after the money and the girls get to do the caring. But because you can appoint more than one and you can say how they make their decisions. On my finances, Steve's first, Kim's second, my close friend Barb's third. And my document says, serially, in the order listed above. On my healthcare, Kim's first, Steve's second, Barb's third. Again, serially, in the order listed above. So if Kim's there, she'll make the decision. If she's not, Steve will. And I've told him if he makes the wrong one, I'll come back and haunt him. The person you appoint has to agree to the appointment. They should understand your wishes and be prepared to carry them out. There is an approved form. I've got examples on the desk outside. You have to sign it, so does the person you appoint. It has to be witnessed. In New South Wales, that can be by a solicitor, a barrister or a registrar of the courts, but the signatures can be witnessed separately. If I was doing mine now, I could get my signature witnessed and the witness would say, I witnessed only the signature of Collen Cartwright. I could send it up to Queensland to Kimmy, she could get hers witnessed. We could send it down to Sydney to Steve, he could get his witnessed, and then to Barb in Brisbane. It's good to get certified copies of the form and give it to whoever you need to. So let's think about this. I said they only come into effect when the person making it has lost decision-making capacity. When does somebody have capacity? Throughout Australia, the legislation is based on the United Nations principle of presumption of capacity. I don't have to prove to you that I'm competent. I'm competent unless you can prove that I'm not. And don't buy into the, look, I was about to say don't buy into the media hype about the percentage of people with dementia. It's a big issue. We do have to be concerned about the increasing numbers of people with dementia. But the majority of people don't. If you're over 90, 24% of people over 90 have dementia. That means 76% don't. Okay? So start from the presumption that the person is competent. And then if you've got any concerns, you move from there. And what you move to is, well, the person has to understand the nature and the effect of the decision to be made. They don't need to use medical terms. They simply need to tell you, yes, I understand, if I do this, this will happen. One old lady whose document I witnessed said, yes, if I don't have CPR, I'd rather die, but if I was in that condition and we described the condition, then I'd rather die than be like that. She understood the nature and the effect of her decision. The person also has to be able to communicate their decision in some way, not necessarily by speaking and writing. I worked with a man at PA Hospital Spinal Unit in Brisbane who could only nod and shake his head. He had the capacity to make his advance directive. Now, incapacity is not ignorance. It's not eccentricity or cultural diversity or having different ethical views. It's not communication failure. I have seen woeful communication in healthcare situations. Hands up anyone in this room who has never made a bad decision. Me too. I've made some doozies in my day. I don't think I lacked capacity at the time, but I wouldn't put money on it. But making what someone else thinks is a bad decision is no evidence of incapacity. You can make your decisions for good reasons, bad reasons, or no reasons. And this is something that solicitors and doctors also get confused about. I don't even have to tell you the reasons. You don't have to be sure that I understood everything. You do have to provide me with as much information as I'm willing to have, but I have a right, if I don't understand anything, to refuse. And disagreeing with your healthcare provider is no evidence of incapacity either. In fact, sometimes it could be the opposite. Just quickly, I think I have time to tell you this. Most people are not afraid of dying, but some people have a very clear idea of how it's going to be after they die. For example, a famous physician died and he went up to heaven, and when he got to the pearly gates, he smiled benignly at St. Peter and he went to walk straight through. And St. Peter said, "Excuse me, go to the back of the line, please." "My good man, you obviously don't know who I am." St. Peter said, "Doesn't matter who you are up here, everyone's equal. Go to the back of the line, please." Well, he was not impressed. He didn't think heaven was going to be like this. And about half an hour later, a famous surgeon died and the same thing happened. Fronts up to St. Peter and goes to walk straight through. St. Peter said, "Go to the back of the line, please." But I invented the surgical procedure." "Doesn't matter. Up here, everyone's equal. Go to the back of the line, please." So the pair of them are back there and they are not happy campers, especially when a few minutes later, this guy in a white coat with a stethoscope round his neck fronts up to St. Peter, smiles, waves and goes straight through. Well, this is too much. So the pair of them go charging up to St. Peter and they say, "Excuse us, you made us go to the back of the line, but you let him go straight through." St. Peter said, "Oh, don't mind him. That's God. He just thinks he's a doctor." Okay. Now, this is really important for you slack lot that haven't done any of this yet. What if you haven't written your advance directive? What if you haven't appointed an enduring guardian? Who is going to make your decisions? Well, let me tell you who's not. The legislation doesn't say next of kin. Okay? Everybody just automatically thinks it's next of kin. There is a specified order of authority in the legislation. It does start, it's called person responsible. It does start with your spouse, and people say to me, "Well, my spouse is my next of kin." Sure, but that's not where their authority comes from. Their authority comes from being first in this list. Now, spouse includes de facto or same-sex spouse. But if there isn't a spouse, it moves to non-professional carer. And that's often a younger daughter or daughter-in-law. And you'll get these big strapping lads come in and say, "Oh, mum's next of kin, so I get to make her decisions." Sorry, Sonny Jim, it's your sister that's been doing all the work. She gets to make the decision. Why? Because the person who is most likely to know what this person would want is the one that spent the most time with them. Another New South Wales case in 2009, a woman had 3 children whom she hardly ever saw. She had a next-door neighbour who would come in every morning and help her out of bed and put her washing on, take her to the doctor. When she lost capacity and the children started making decisions that the neighbour knew she wouldn't want, the neighbour applied to the guardianship tribunal and was deemed to be carer under the meaning of the Act. She had authority ahead of those 3 children to make the decisions. She was much more likely to know what the woman would want. If there's been no carer, you might have had a sudden heart attack or stroke or a car accident. And let me say to you, anybody can be injured in a car accident. These are not just for older people. This documentation, every one of you need. And then it moves to close relative or friend. At that point, you could have half a dozen people having a barney over your bed. Don't risk it. Appoint an enduring guardian and empower them by giving them an advance directive. Okay, the priority in New South Wales for decision making, if you've written an advance directive and it meets the current situation, it is binding. Nobody can overturn it, not the doctor, not your enduring guardian, not your family members, not anyone else. If you haven't, and there's a guardian being appointed by the tribunal, that's next. If there's neither of those, but you've appointed your enduring guardian, which I hope all of you will have done by the end of this week, that person comes next. If not, person responsible, and if you can't even find someone who can make the decision, application to the guardianship tribunal. 2 more minutes? Okay. So let's look at some of the benefits of advance directives. When I ask people what they're most afraid of if they were terminally ill, loss of mental faculties comes in first. Advance directives come into effect when you've lost your mental faculties. Loss of control comes in second. This gives control back to the patient. It ensures the patient's wishes are known, it's their own words. It assists healthcare providers with decision making. It relieves family stress at times of trauma. You would all know that times of stress and trauma can bring out both the best and the worst in families. It also gives security in relation to future events. I hope my house doesn't burn down. I've got an insurance policy against that. I hope I don't have a car accident. I've got an insurance policy against that as well. I hope I'll never be terminally ill and can't speak for myself. I've got an insurance policy against that. It's called an advance directive and an enduring guardian. It's my security in case something goes wrong in the future. We did ask people, the community and health professionals, what might stop people making advance directives, not knowing how to do it, not knowing enough about